I like to ask a question. Some of you would out there tell me I'm not Jewish, and yet you're willing to believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. Some of you, yes, you really believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, and you don't really want to have him in your life. Now, how can you take both sides? If he is the Messiah, I decided on one thing when I learned this was that what went wrong, and I wanted to do something about it, and God held me to it. And that's why I'm up here, because I want us to know that Yeshua is the Messiah, that we've considered others, that people go to Montefiore Cemetery in Queens to visit the grave of this false Messiah. And there were the others, Shabbatai Zvi and others. But you know what? Here I see that people called Yeshua the Messiah. This woman at the well, she recognized him. She went to her neighbors and said, "Here's a man who's told me everything I've ever done. This has to be the Messiah." One man went to his brother to introduce him and says, "We have found the Messiah." And you can't let this go. And I'll tell you something. You can't stop, the spread of the word among the Jewish people. This time, since the 6-day war, that Jerusalem has been reclaimed by the Jewish people, that there's been a great turning of awakening. Many speakers would go to the Jewish people and they'd get doors slammed in their faces, and then all of a sudden, the doors were opening. And today, it's like every rabbi has a problem. I just see where this all gets you. To see, to keep on you following the same old thing. You fasted for your forgiveness of sins, but what good has it done you? And you still want to believe that he is the Messiah, and then you have the problem. I know people would say, "Well, yes, I agree he's the Messiah, but I can't accept him as God." Mm-hmm. Well, that God is written in plural form. As Elohim. You read that, and that's why Moses made that statement. You read in Deuteronomy 6:4, "The Lord our God, the Lord is one." That we weren't worshiping many gods, worshiping one. He is Ahav, Abin, and Ruach HaKodesh. And then you want to tell me, "Oh, yeah, they copied the religion." But I see sometimes you have 2 Bibles in your hands, and you mark down Yochanan 4:6, where Yeshua says, "And nobody comes to Av except through him." And I had a real came one day to surrender my life to God, and I had out the Siddur to fill in. I wondered why God wasn't hearing me, but I saw, "You want Yeshua?" And realized, it doesn't make an excuse. Now, you want to say to have your 2 Bibles and mark down Yochanan 4:6, and you know what? It's saying that you have to come to God through Yeshua. And that's been since man fell, since God made the announcement. And then you want to tell, "I don't believe in God." Tell me I don't believe in God. No, I didn't turn my back on God. Like I said, I'm reaching out to God through Yeshua, the way He's prescribed it from Genesis 3:15 when He pronounced judgment on the serpent. And you want to think this God is only your God, but it doesn't just belong to you. You're being like Jonah. And Jonah refused to go to the foreign nation, refused to preach. And you know what? That's why you don't want to go to the Gentiles. You invite them to come in and just let them embrace, but you don't seek. Messiah said that he came to seek and to save that which is lost. And we should do the same thing. And believe me, when you get a hold of Yeshua, you will. Right now there's about 144,000 sealed up by God. I think they're already walking the earth. And one day they will be out there preaching. They'll be out there and they'll make up for what the Goyim haven't done. You think you can keep this God to yourself, but you know that somebody said, if there is a God at all, He is the God of all. He doesn't only call the Jewish people. He is your God, yes, Rabbi Rebbitzin, Cantor, congregant. But he is really also the God of all, the God of Israel and the God of all, who chose Israel for himself, but has made all in his own image, from Adam and Eve, made all of one blood, many races, and called the Jewish people to himself. You take a look out through your Tanakh, and what was it, that in the on the plagues, God was showing himself to be God, that all the gods of Egypt were just idols, were nothing, that they couldn't save the Egyptians. And I'm sure that perhaps he could have had two chosen nations if Pharaoh hadn't been so stubborn. You have Jonah. Jonah went to a foreign nation. Daniel. You see, we're a pagan king. He really thought, oh, this is all that I've done, but he had to be driven to madness, and he turned to the true and living God. And his grandson, who was sitting on the throne, and he thought he defied God by using the articles of the temple. And Daniel said, you know what? Your grandfather realized, or he said, realized who the true and living God was, and you should have followed the same. And there's probably plenty out there who right now are prodigals for walking away from God, walking away from the teaching that you were brought up in. And it's time to come back. There was Naaman. Naaman was a Syrian officer. And he came to, where did he go? He went to Israel, to the prophet, to find out where to go. And he went and found the healing in the Jordan River and completely healed of his leprosy. The story of Ruth, which you remember on Shavuot. You read the book of Ruth. Ruth was a Moabitess woman. And her mother-in-law came out of the land, had to go back to the land, and Ruth wanted to go with her. She wanted to find the true and living God and became an ancestress of the Messiah. So why don't you just read your word, read the Tanakh, and maybe you'll, like one rabbi who realized who Yeshua was. And wake up and realize, you know what? Don't just say, well, I accept him realize he's the Messiah, believe he is the Messiah. But why don't you just get right with him and don't tell me I'm not Jewish, but find the real faith. Amen.